So before I get into a specific example of something that we do at Fresh Address, email hygiene impact on migration. Studies have shown that about 12%, 13% of email addresses entered on a sign-up form are initially invalid due to misspelling or attempting to use a fake address. So, you're at a cash register, someone asks you if you want to be part of the program, you say yes, maybe you get a discount, you want to make sure you can get a lower price when you're there. Whether it's you or it's them, they could fat finger your email address, and now it's a bad email, and you either not going to get something, or honestly, the worst scenario that does happen is you could misspell a perfectly valid email address, and the misspelling is actually a spam trap. So sometimes something as simple as that can throw off your entire campaign. And when you compound that over time, a database decay can cause deliverability and email ROI to take a hit if you're sending to or through a new ESP as part of that data migration. So something that we can do to help this is one of our products called Safe to Send. So let's go to the next slide. So I'm just going to show you two slides, just an example of what our product is. And if you would like a more detailed report or more detailed example, please feel free to email me and I can send you something. But I really just want to give a brief overview of what we're talking about and what this means. So Safe to Send. If you upload a file, you work with us, you upload a file. So in this example, it's around 10 million. We're going to go through and give you a complete breakdown of what the composition of your file is. So something that is valid, safe to send, so our product, it means it passed 100% of our process. Email addresses should be safe to send to. We give you our guarantee on that. Now, something that's valid, it passes a majority of our process, but there's a couple things we can't confirm. We still say that it's valid, but we're not going to give it that 100% guarantee. So this is just running through that data and saying, what's valid. And in this particular list, a good chunk of the file, 97%, is valid, and that's great. But the real problem that really comes up is, if we go to the next slide, the warnings. So again, 97% of that file is good to go, which is great, right? But in this file, there's 10,000 confirmed spam traps, approximately. 124 invalid email accounts, around 20,000 that were disposable, 16,000 that had a bad domain, 9,000 that were on a do not email list. So while it's a small percentage of a 10 million file is still quite large. And any one of those 10,000 spam traps could shut down your account right away. So this is one of those things where we're giving you a complete breakdown, and this is just a couple of the categories we're looking at, a complete breakdown of your file so that you can make decisions off of that. So as you can see, as part of this, you see those little codes. We have B, XP, MR, whatever it may be. Yeah, so this is a summary file just to show you, what's the composition, how is my file doing, how could my campaign do? But when you actually look at the results file you uploaded, which hopefully, as Pato was talking about earlier, has a primary key and is uniquely identified, part of the thing it's doing is it's marking each of those individual emails with this code. So not only do you have an overview of, where does my email campaign stand, but you can go through those individual emails and do some initial data analysis yourself. How did this particular grouping of emails do? Maybe the particular channels that they came from, and you can further clarify it with your marketing team from there to shut it down or introduce a new method to help clean it up. And so this is just the warnings that it shows. One thing that we're very good at, and I'll speak to a little bit later, is we're also good at catching anything. They mistyped the domain, they forgot the @ sign, there's a double period, a double.com. We've seen pretty much everything, and we have a category to showcase it. And if we can't correct it, we're at least showing you where it is and what you can do to fix it. All right. So that's just a breakdown of some parts of the report. And Zoe, if you just click this just to make them appear, because I can speak to them. All right, so as part of our Safe to Send process, we check, correct, and we protect. And a lot of this is going to be pretty self-explanatory, so I'll give just a high-level overview. But then, as our coming slides go, I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail on what each of these steps do. So from a base perspective, we're going to check, we're going to verify that each address in real time is real and confirm that it's valid and can accept mail, right? The next step, and I think a lot of people are familiar with this, is just doing a spell check. We have our own technology behind this. We're very good at seeing these. Like I said before, been around for about 20 years. So we're checking a lot of different errors that could occur in your file and working to fix those so that when you look at it, you have either a clean file or we've partitioned off the bad ones so you know not to include them. And then finally, protect. So I think this is one of those areas that we excel at and is exceptionally important to identify, is making sure that those spam traps and other damaging email addresses that are deliverable are categorized. And that's where it could really destroy your campaign if you're not up to snuff with that. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll go into a little bit more detail what each of these steps actually, they do. So one, we're going to determine, is the email address valid and accepting? So there's a couple ways you can do this. One, we're going through our different syntax checks. So, RFCs are just different internet accepted standards that are for email addresses. So we're checking to make sure those are upheld. We have our own standards as a company, just because we've been around for a while. We're doing, general domain checks. So that means, checking the real-time MX record, making sure that domain server actually accepts emails. But checking the top level and lower level domains, is it actually .com or not .cmo or something that wouldn't actually be allowed? And then each of these ISPs have their own specific rules for emails themselves. So like Gmail, they don't allow underscores in the handle. That's something we check for. Other ISPs have their own rules, and that's something we're also going to be looking at. But that's just a specific example that what we're watching. Then there's account level validation. So we have real-time SMTP check, but also we have a vast partnership with different ESPs. So we're going to be checking recent email deliverability findings with those internal and external partners to double check if those are valid emails. All right, so just a couple of examples to go through, which will be on the next slide. All right, so a couple of these are keystroke errors. For the first one, they forgot an @ sign. The second one, they put a comma instead of a dot for the .net. The next one after that, they put 2 dots. You could run through all of these and see just basic mistakes. Either someone fat fingered it, or the email addresses were required some other way and they weren't formatted correctly. This happens all the time, whether it's from the person working the station, or it's a failed data migration where, no, I shouldn't say failed, but a data migration where it's not removing and cleaning the data as it should. So it's going to have syntax errors. So this is something we're checking for. So if we go for the next slide to talk about correct. So this is where we're going to go through kind of the different things we're really good at. So we're going to be looking for missing or duplicated @ signs and periods, anything that has accidental spaces, quotes, other incorrect characters that aren't normally associated with an email address, duplicate, missing or transposed characters, misspellings, even misheard email domains. We have a kind of our own little collection of mistypings, like putting like google.com instead of gmail.com. It happens all the time, and that's something we're used to seeing and we can catch. And then something as simple as misunderstanding, one versus I, right? That happens all the time. So going to the next slide, just to look at a couple of examples. We see a couple of these formatting errors where, IBM.com, where they actually spell out the dot, Zappos having 1 P instead of 2. Just a couple of examples to look at for, what we're looking for and the fact that we can correct it and making sure that your data is ready to go if you're migrating platforms. All right, so for our final one, protect. So this is something we're exceptionally good at identifying. So this is the deliverable but dangerous, deliverable but toxic, undesirable, suspect, not best practice. These emails are the ones that could sink your campaign. So something as simple as one spam trap that maybe was mistyped from a valid email address, which happens. Something undesirable. So I know a popular thing, if a company comes out with a new program where if you sign up, you get, let's say a month free. We've seen those signups before. People will use disposable domains, disposable email addresses, and sign up for them. And while that's great for them, it really means nothing for you in terms of a real email address, a real customer behind it. So that's something that we're good at identifying and weeding out. And just kind of, I don't want to go through too many of these, but from a role account perspective, we allow for certain people to use role accounts if they want them. Generally, that's not best practice, but we have the technology to allow you to make that an exception if you want role accounts or not. All right, so going to the next slide, just a couple of examples. I think we all know what role accounts are, but something like info at or admin at is an example of what you could see. Any fictitious emails where at Microsoft or Bill Gates at Microsoft.com. Just a couple of quick examples. I won't go too much time into this, but we can catch these and we're going to notify you of them so that you don't continue to send to them, because that could block or blacklist your campaign. All right, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so we've talked a decent amount about data hygiene. So obviously it's important to clean your file. It's really important to scan all your emails in real time. Like one of the things we offer, we have an API for real-time integration. So if someone is, fat fingering their email when they sign up for something at a store, that program, that API is going to catch that and say, hey, did you actually mean, at gmail.com instead of whatever you wrote? And finally, a third step to this solving these problems permanently issue is make sure you scan your file throughout the year. I talked about how 6% of your email addresses, which could be good, turn toxic every year. So it's not just a one-time thing, it's a year-round aspect that you have to make sure you do. And finally, I think the last slide that I have to talk through, and I won't spend too much time because I want to get to a Q&A if there are any questions. Email hygiene ROI. So email hygiene is great for your data migration. It's something you should absolutely do. But it's something you should do because it's going to help you make more money. You want to make sure that you're getting the corrections you're actually sending to customer email addresses that want to work with you. We're detecting those spam traps to make sure you avoid getting blacklisted. We want to make sure your inbox placement is up, so your clicks and your revenues are good. And at the end of the day, this all leads to higher customer satisfaction, lower call center costs, and you're going to stop wasting money sending to dangerous email addresses that honestly aren't going to do anything for you. They're only going to hurt you.